Hi everyone, welcome. Today we're in Puchong and behind me is the As-Salam Mosque. We have a very fantastic treat for you today because we're here to set up a Jib. And this is not a small Jib, this is a 32 feet long Jib. A Jib gives you fantastic vistas, really wide, beautiful, booming shots. And what we have here is 32 feet. This monster can really bring you up high. But to set up something like this takes a lot of time and there's a lot of equipment involved, a lot of components. So we'll show you how this is done. Before we begin setting up the Jib, it is very important that we find a location and confirm that location. That is where we want to set up our Jib or our crane. Because if we get the location wrong, we have to disassemble everything again and then go to a new location and start the assembly all over again. So it is very important we find a location, confirm that. We need to know how far it goes, how far the Jib goes before we even start the assembly. So over here, this is the base for the crane. And we have Pan here who's doing the assembly. So what he needs to do now is to unlock this part of the base. He is setting up the crane support. This is the, well, it looks like a tripod. It has spiked feet. It fits into the base over here. This is to support the rest of the Jib. So you got to really make sure this guy is stable and tight. This is the post where the Jib will go on top of. So we need to make sure that this one is securely mounted onto the base. It's not even halfway through. I think we've got only like 10-15% of it done. But the shots are worth it. Really worth it. It kind of looks like a Jib. Looks like a plasma cannon. Okay, this is done. Do take note of the joints over here. You'll need an Allen wrench that comes with the set and of course the screw that comes with the set. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to install this segment of the Jib's arm at the top here. You've got to beware of the joints. You've got to make sure it joins well. So then I will lock this in. We have a tripod over there that is supporting the back end of the Jib. Right at this moment, we notice that the Jib is taking shape and the front is going to be very long. So it is very important that we have a support. We'll take a tripod or a very heavy duty light stand and then we can put it at the front of the Jib to support the front part of it. Menggunakan color? Color. Bongsik. Changsik. In this 36-degree Malaysian weather, this black heat radiating Jib is near its completion. With such a long and heavy arm like this, we'll need to install suspension cables all along the top and the sides of the arm to increase rigidity and to reduce flexibility of the arm so that when we boom the Jib up and down or move it left and right, it will not cause vibrations to the camera. Never ever tilt or boom your Jib up without these suspension cables because you will cause flexing and you will damage the Jib. So these are suspension cables which will help to support the Jib. What I'm doing is I'm loosening this part of the suspension cable so that it can be joined to the end of the Jib. You will notice that there are these smaller suspension cables. Now these are for the support of the sides. So what our guys are doing here is they are tightening the support cables. You see, this one needs to be tight. In this case, this is a little bit sagging. This suspension cable is a little bit more unique compared to the rest because it goes all the way to the front of the Jib to connect with the mounting for the pan tilt head. The purpose of this silver looking tube over here is to mount the pan tilt head. It has to be leveled horizontally before we install the pan tilt head. Next, we'll show you how to install the remotely operated pan tilt head onto the Jib. This is a very important process and you need to take great care because the smoothness of your camera's movements depends a lot on how well you balance the pan tilt head. You'll need to make sure that this piece of equipment is leveled off perfectly with the horizon. Take care to do this part right. It should be done before any camera is added onto the Jib. Next, this is the fun part. This is where we attach the camera onto the Jib. What we have here is a Sony NX5P and Pan has securely mounted the camera and is trying to balance it onto the pan tilt head. We've got to make sure that the camera doesn't fall forwards or backwards. If it remains neutrally balanced on the Jib, it will maintain its position without tilting forwards or backwards, kind of like this. Now, this is a maneuver that Pan is doing that shows that the camera is very well balanced on the remote pan tilt head. We were testing the balance for the tilt, and now we're testing the balance for the panning as well. If the balancing has been done well, the camera should be spinning flat on both axes. Now we'll install a horizontal bar to mount the counterweights to the tail end of the Jib. It's time to add the counterweights. We've got 20 kilograms on board. Now we've added a 15, so there's 20, 20, 15 for a total of 55 kilograms, and the Jib hasn't even raised itself yet. So we've added another 15, followed by a 5 kilogram weight. Next, we install the motors, starting with a pan and followed by the tilt motor. It's important that we don't contact the gears yet. And then we install the cables that power the motors. We move on to the cables that control the camera, like the Control L or LANC cable, and also the HDMI cable. When all that is done, we can finally move on to the stage that I feel is the most interesting part of this setup, the control box. The control box lets the operator tilt or pan the camera from a distance away. There is a reason why we don't contact the gears before the control box is set up. We're simply not sure how much torque or force is applied to the gears before the control box is switched on, and we don't want to strip or damage the gears. So as long as we've managed the amount of torque or force, then we can contact the gears. Remember the motor cable all the way from the front. Now we'll bring it back all the way to the tail end of the Jib. The 4-pin cable is for the pan and tilt control of the camera. We also connect the 3-pin LANC cable, which remotely lets us control the camera's recording, focus, and zoom functions. This monitor will accompany you throughout your Jib operations. The live video feed on the monitor comes from the HDMI cable connected to the camera all the way at the front of the Jib. In the end, we used 95 kilograms to balance an NX5P which only weighed in at 2.2 kilograms. But the results were worth it. All the effort we took to set up this 32-feet Jib, all of it paid off in the end. A Jib of this magnitude let us carry heavier cameras into the sky. This is perfect for feature filmmaking, large-scale weddings, and corporate events. We could use the Jib for an entire day without worrying about battery drain. We had a bit of time left, so we set up our new Sony AX100 camera onto the Jib, and this camera shoots at 4K resolution. It was an exciting experience watching a small little 4K resolution camera up on a 32-feet Jib. The Jib gave us precise camera moves regardless of the wind conditions. Elevated, floating, graceful and smooth camera moves. If these are what you want for your projects,
this is the gear to get. We hope you've enjoyed this tutorial, and we look forward to seeing you again in our next episode of Gear Up TV. Until next time, gear up and shoot it great!